a lot of times, a lot of black people have history misconstrued about with the truth about the Democratic and Republican parties, and I'm guilty of that myself. I always believed that the Democrats were for black people, and there was a lot of misnomers I had about the Republican Party. Me now, as a black conservative, I open my mind to the truth and I pay attention to what's really going on. And like me, I hope that those who are watching this will understand the truth a bit more. This is Carol Swain from Prager University. I tried to do this video on TikTok and they took it down, and it's actual truth. And I think that black people need to pay attention to this because the truth is something that we need nowadays. And when you dive into history, you got to realize that history is being fed to us. But history is also something that we should research on our own. So continue.
When you think about racial equality and civil rights, which political party comes to mind? The Republicans or the Democrats? Most people would probably say the Democrats.
Right.
But this answer is incorrect. Since its founding in 1829, the Democratic Party has fought against every major civil rights initiative and has a long history of discrimination. The Democratic Party defended slavery,
Right.
started the Civil War, opposed Reconstruction, founded the Ku Klux Klan, imposed segregation, perpetrated lynchings, and fought against the Civil Rights Acts of the 1950s and 19.
See, that right there, those things right there should be enough to let you understand what the Democratic Party truly was. And I want y'all to look at this objectively. Don't already have biases to the Republican Party. I want you to look at it with an open mind and with proofs and evidences, and do your own research.
1960s. In contrast, the Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an anti-slavery party. Its mission was to stop the spread of slavery into the new Western territories with the aim of abolishing it entirely. This effort, however, was dealt a major blow by the Supreme Court in the 1857 case, Dred Scott versus Sanford.
Now, this Dred Scott versus Sanford was monumental because if you pay attention to what happened in the case and who overturned it, your eyes will open up. And I want y'all to go back and do the research after this video.
The court ruled that slaves aren't citizens, they're property. The 7 justices who voted in favor of slavery, all Democrats. The 2 justices who dissented, both Republicans. The slave.
So just look at that. The 7 Democrats said yes, that slaves aren't citizens. They're property. 7 of them said yeah. This is the Democratic Party that so-called black people have voted for over and over for the last 80 years. We'll say at least 80 years. But the 2 Republicans said that they weren't. The only 2 out of the 9 said that they're citizens and they're not property. But the Democratic Party is for us. Continue.
Every question was, of course, ultimately resolved by a bloody civil war. The commander-in-chief during that war was the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, the man who freed the slaves. 6 days after the Confederate Army surrendered, John Wilkes Booth, a Democrat, assassinated President Lincoln. Lincoln's vice president, a Democrat named Andrew Johnson, assumed.
Now look at that. The Republican Party was started by Lincoln for anti-slavery. That the reason the Republican Party was started was because it was against abolishing slavery. It was for abolishing slavery. But his vice president was a Democrat. So Abraham Lincoln was killed by a Democrat, and his vice president was a Democrat who became president. Convenient? Continue on.
The presidency. But Johnson adamantly opposed Lincoln's plan to integrate the newly freed slaves into the South's economic and social order. Johnson and the Democratic Party were unified in their opposition to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment, which gave blacks citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which gave blacks the vote. All
Now look at that. This is what they opposed. They opposed abolishing slavery. They opposed getting rid of slavery. They opposed citizenship for black people. And they opposed voting rights for blacks. But this is the Democratic Party. This is the party that we're supposed to believe in hand over fist. That's why the Democratic Party wants your votes, because they don't want you to research the truth. They want to keep giving you and giving you and giving you. They don't want to tell you the truth. Research your own history.
3 passed only because of universal Republican support. During the era of Reconstruction, federal troops stationed in the South helped secure rights for the newly freed slaves. Hundreds of black men were elected to Southern state legislatures as Republicans, and 22 black Republicans served in the U.S. Congress by 1900. The Democrats did not elect a black man to Congress until 1935. But
So look at that. The only people elected to government or Congress were only allowed to be Republicans. Blacks could only be Republicans if you wanted to be in government. They didn't. You see that it says that it didn't appoint any black people to Democratic offices until years later. But the Republicans were already doing it. So how are we so strict on being followers of the Democratic Party? That's why I don't pay this Kamala Harris thing no mind and stuff, because I know what it is. This is a ploy to get black votes.
after Reconstruction ended, when the federal troops went home, Democrats roared back into power in the South. They quickly reestablished white supremacy across the region with measures like black codes, laws that restricted the ability of blacks to own property and run businesses, and they imposed poll taxes and literacy tests used to subvert black citizens' right to vote.
So figure that. They did all these things to subvert us from voting, literacy tests and things of that nature. Meanwhile, making the schools and things deplorable so that we wouldn't pass those tests. Those tests were all about stopping the citizenship of black people. And this is all coming from the Democratic Party.
How was all of this enforced? By terror, much of it instigated by the Ku Klux Klan, founded by a Democrat, Nathan Bedford Forrest. As his
Ku Klux Klan was founded by a Democrat. I mean, I could stop it there, and that's enough proof to show what the Democrats' intentions really are. It's white supremacy.
Historian Eric Foner, himself a Democrat, notes, in effect, the Klan was a military force serving the interests of the Democratic Party. President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, shared many views with the Klan. He resegregated many federal agencies and even screened the first movie ever played at the White House, the racist film, The Birth of a Nation, originally entitled The Klansman. A few decades later, the only serious congressional opposition to the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 came from Democrats. 80% of Republicans in Congress supported the bill, less than 70% of Democrats did. Democratic senators filibustered the bill for 75 days until Republicans mustered the few extra votes needed to break the logjam. And when all of their efforts to enslave blacks, keep them enslaved, and then keep them from voting had failed, the Democrats came up with a new strategy. If black people are going to vote, they might as well vote for Democrats. As President Lyndon Johnson was purported to have said about the Civil Rights Act, I'll have them voting Democrat for 200 years.
That's the plan. It's like, if we can't stop them from voting, make sure they vote for us. And this ploy has worked, because all of the things that they're doing, the Democrats do, is keep these cities poor and impoverished and don't help them and do nothing for them. But give them aid, give them, jobs, give them welfare, give them these things of that nature, so they'll continually vote for their handout instead of building on their own. That's the difference between the Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats smile in your face like they're a friend. Meanwhile, they're that wolf in sheep's clothing. The sheep spends his whole life fearing the wolf, only to be eaten by the shepherd.
So now, The Democratic Party prospers on the votes of the very people it has spent much of its history oppressing. Democrats falsely claim that the Republican Party is the villain, when in reality, it's the failed policies of the Democratic Party that have kept blacks down. Massive government welfare has decimated the black family. Opposition to school choice has kept them trapped in failing schools. Politically correct policing has left black neighborhoods defenseless against violent crime. So when you think about racial equality and civil rights, which political party should come to mind? I'm Carol Swain, professor of political science and law at Vanderbilt University for Prager University.